TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, I'm taking it higher.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for Fight Night Fortunes with the one and only Mr. Lou Finocchiaro, UFC Paris. We gave Lou the week off last week. No, I'm kidding, of course. UFC was off last week. The week prior, of course, in Las Vegas at the Sphere, Noche. And now we travel to Paris. 14 fights in all, 9 fighters from France. And as Lou said in his Sneak Teep podcast on Mondays, which you can catch, of course, at GamLou, at his website as well. One Belgium that he figured that they would kind of grab on and hold to. So super psyched and excited to talk in the large octagon, as he said, 4 fights of 170 pounds or more. So it's going to be an exciting card here. Get your note cards, get your scorecards. We got the passport. So without further ado, let's bring in the true star of this show, the one and only Mr. Lou Finocchiaro.
Welcome. No star here. Fight enthusiast, without question. Appreciate you having me on, Jeffrey. Week off, I'm fresh, and let's hope we're firing fresh.
Week off, you do what we do. It was a football weekend, college football, NFL, baseball winding down, but UFC also has a little fight night on Tuesdays. Did you at least keep the fighting going for a week off?
The Tuesday night Dana White Contender Series, I usually watch those because I'm home on Tuesday. I've met a bunch of college buddies for Happy Hour Tuesday, so I missed it. It didn't bother me to miss it. I feel like the talent level on this year's production of all the shows of this Dana White Contender Series has been abnormally poor. And really what they're doing is they're just bringing tremendous cheap labor into the organization. These kids coming from Contender to UFC will fight for peanuts. It puts tremendous pressure on the fighters that have been around for a year to 5 years. Maybe they're not superstars they're trying to earn. And so they don't take a fight. Somebody that'll fight for darn near nothing will take it. And the UFC uses these newbies and these inexperienced Contender Series athletes as leverage against their more veteran athletes. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's part of the model by which they work.
I don't like talking, I'm going to use the word politics, Lou. It's the wrong word here. I know Jake Paul and Dana White have been going back and forth now. Of course, Jake Paul trying to bring equality to like a $50,000 minimum for each fighter. Dana White's been doing this a long, long time. I kind of get the feeling no one can tell Dana what to do. It's his show, correct?
For the most part, yes, because the UFC can take advantage of the fact that the fighters will never unionize. And they'll never unionize because to take all the good fighters and get them to agree not to fight, you'll have a bunch of scabs come in that the UFC is more than willing to pay, and people want to watch fights. So it's a terrible situation for the athletes. And while I'm clearly directly critical to the UFC on this issue, there are many issues I'm very supportive of the UFC on, Jeff. And let's just turn the tables. If it was the athletes that had a union and they were bleeding the UFC dry to the extent that the UFC was having a hard time putting on 40 to 44 productions a year because of the tax on them from fighter pay, then I would criticize the fighters. But the fact is, it's the UFC abusing these athletes. And I have to say something because not only do I recognize it, I support the athletes. They're the spine and the backbone of what I do. And while I also support the UFC, there should be a little bit better treatment of the athletes by the organization, in my opinion.
Go back 2 weeks ago. We'll use 2 weeks. Noche favorites go 6-3-1, as you had said in your Sneak Teep podcast. For the year, 67.4% the favorites are hitting. But for you, you're still in the plus side. Hats off and congrats, because as you know and I know, we're wired that way. It's tough when the favorites are hitting at such a high clip that you're still gaining some positive dollars to the bankroll. You said the average is 63%, so we will need some dogs in the next couple months here to get that 63% by the end of the year here, Lou.
Wouldn't it be nice if the correction came? I've been waiting for it all year. It started this high. It's been running 67, 68 all year. It's forced me to change how I look at some of these fights to a degree, how I bet them, surely. And we'll see what happens. But I'm still hopeful that we'll end up at 63, 64%.
Fights this week in Paris, as we have done shows now from Denver. We did the Mexico, obviously, series. The Mexican fighters in Noche. We've been down to Australia. We've been across the pond. As I stated in the intro, 9 fighters from France. Expecting, or I should say, have a lot of home cooking potentially here, Lou.
Well, when you fight in a foreign area and the UFC populates that area, be it Perth, England, Czechoslovakia or Brazil, with those local fighters, they do that to expand their brand in that area, number one. They do that by highlighting their athletes, number two, and some of those athletes seem to often, I should say it this way, oftentimes certain athletes will be given favorable matchups to help propel the UFC in their expansion in that area. So these are all things we look for when we determine and start to dissect a UFC card. So we know that there's 9 French fighters plus a Belgian fighter on the card. All those will be regarded well by the home crowd in Paris. And so we just need to be aware of who those fighters are, who they're fighting, and what kind of circumstances they're in.
I always listen to your intro on your podcast, big cage, small cage. Usually I hear a lot of small cage, usually when they're in the Apex, obviously in Las Vegas. You mentioned in your podcast, large cage. Give us the thought. You said there's 4 fights of 170 pounds or more weight, I should say. So again, the bigger the guys, the bigger the cage, the better it is. What about the smaller guys here? Is it a lot tougher for them in those bigger cages, or do they seem to keep it more in the middle of the ring?
The cage equates to the extra real estate, allows for people that need space, more space. And the grappler or the wrestler that relies on getting their hands on the opponent, because there's more real estate, has a more difficult time. The smaller the athlete, the more space, the more difficult it is to engage. The big guys, the big 170 and above, I track because that's where your finishes are. That's where the power is the big people. And so you put those big, huge heavyweights at 265 into a small cage, and it's like two guys fighting in a phone booth. And if you put them in the big cage, there's more room. So I just like to, these are all aspects to the handicap that we must be aware of.
Going to break down 4 fights here. I am on DraftKings as we speak right now. The first fight we have on top is women. Nora Cornell versus Jacqueline Cavalcante. And currently at DraftKings, Jacqueline is minus 205. Nora is plus 170. Over 2.5 now, minus 375, Lou.
Yeah, I mean, two women fighting, you're getting an over 2.5, and you're getting over 250. So if we see something other than that, that'll stop. That'll cause us to stop and talk. These two fought in 2021. Cavalcante won a decision then. At that point in time, I'm going to call her Cornol or Cannoli, the French fighter. Excuse the mispronunciation. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. Anyway, they fought to a close decision. Cavalcante won. Cavalcante now is still younger, while Cornoli is 34 years old. And while she's fighting at home, I still think she's going to encounter the same kinds of issues she found against Cavalcante in the first fight. Cavalcante's big, she's long, she moves well, she has a longer reach, going to have a reach advantage here, and I think she's just going to put together enough volume to be able to beat her in a decision again. I don't see this fight going much different than it did in 2021 because I see the French fighter, Cannoli, as relatively similar to what she was then. Maybe she's added a little bit of grappling, and that's what she's going to have to attack Cavalcante with, because Cavalcante, the Portuguese fighter, is a good striker.
Shout out to Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Yo, thank you so much for joining us here, Daniel. So you're saying they fought in 21, now 4 years difference, not enough. Sometimes fighters get better, a little better seasoning, more experience, but here you're basically saying not enough, huh?
I think they've both probably evolved. I give Cavalcante the credit for evolving more. Remember, when they fought in 2021, 3 years ago, Cavalcante was 23, green. She's 27 and has UFC experience now. She's a different fighter, and I regard her as a legitimate favorite in the fight.
Our second fight here, Klein and Roberts. Let me pull up the numbers as we speak here. Wow. Since Monday, now here. Klein minus 900. Roosevelt Roberts plus 600. Over 2.5 plus 135. If you think it's going to get over the 2.5. If you think it's going to be under, now minus 175, Lou.
Klein is a strong, powerful fighter. He's been known to sub opponents, and Roosevelt has been known to be subbed. Now, that all being said, Roosevelt is 7 years the younger man. Roosevelt Roberts. He is about the same age, but he's 5 inches taller and has a reach advantage here. Klein has done some good work at 155 pounds, where this fight will be held. But Roberts is huge for the division. I lean to Roberts a little bit here as a live dog, not necessarily because I think this should be a pick'em fight. I actually think Klein should be a favorite, but he should be 250 or 3. This number is way out of whack, and for that reason, I'm willing to take Roberts, primarily a striker that's going to need to keep this on the feet and use every inch of that 30-foot cage to keep Klein at distance in order to keep this thing standing, keep Roosevelt Roberts striking on the offense, and not engage, press against the fence or on the floor. If Roberts can keep it standing, I think he has a good shot to upset Klein here, but Klein's the rightful favorite.
Minus 900. I can see a lot of money line parlays go up in flames if Roberts can, pull the upset there, Lou.
No question about it.
All right, so the next one we're going to pull up here, let me grab this. Imavov and Brendan Allen currently right now. Imavov minus 205, Brendan Allen plus 170, under over 2.5, minus 135, the under plus 105, Lou.
Yeah, this fight was scheduled for 5 rounds earlier in the week. I handicapped it at such. Now it's 3 rounds. That's interesting. Imavov just beat Jared Cannonier, a top 5 athlete in the division, and he is well-rounded. He's athletic. He's strong. He had some gas problems early, meaning cardio, but he's overcome those in the last couple 5-round fights that he's been able to experience. He has. Some fights ago, he had some trouble with a grappler, and he's in with a grappler in this fight. Since then, he hasn't fought many grapplers, and he knows in this fight that Jared Allen will not be able to compete with him on the feet. Allen may think he can, but he can't. Allen's going to want to go at this Imavov, the French fighter. Now, he's a Russian, born in Russia, trains in Paris, so he's fighting out of Paris. He'll be the hometown guy. Allen has to get into him, has to hold onto him, press him against the fence, and get him to the floor. That's how Allen's going to win this fight. He'll also be able to suck the gas out of Imavov, with Imavov trying to get away from the constant pressure wrestling of Allen. Now, the big cage will help Imavov. The French crowd will help Imavov. Allen knows there's nothing going for him in this fight, but what this fight's going to come down to is Imavov's takedown defense. And on his statistics, it shows 74% takedown defense, which is really good, but a closer look at who he's fought, no one's tried to take him down. Jared Allen's going to take him down because he won't win the fight if he doesn't. So where this fight takes place will have a lot to say with who's winning it, but Allen is surely the underdog here, but maybe shouldn't be such a high-priced underdog. Imavov maybe 140, minus 150, maybe minus 160. You start to get up into those 200s, 205. That's about the limit.
That's the co-main event. And the main event here, Moicano, versus St. Denis. St. Denis minus 285, Moicano plus 230. Over 2.5 plus 154. If you like the under in the main event, it is now under 2.5 minus 200 low.
Yeah, so clearly the lines makers are looking for violence quick and early. Moicano, a grappler. He's primarily a Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialist, fought at 145 much of his career. Once he moved to 155 a couple years ago, he started to have some success. He wasn't killing himself, losing the weight. And he's now 36, so it's hard to lose all that weight. He's had some recent success against guys that have the intelligence level of a box of hammers. His last fight, his last opponent had him knocked out and then didn't finish him and screwed around and ended up getting beat. Moicano at this stage of his career is totally focused and determined, knows he can't get beat because he has this one last run at a title in him. And he's going to go to France to take on St. Denis, who lost a year ago to Dustin Poirier via knockout, hasn't fought since. So that means St. Denis is refocusing himself. He's getting ready. He's improving for this fight. He's the much larger man, the much thicker man. He's the legitimate 155er. He's also spent 5 years in French paratrooper military and is a highly decorated French paratrooper. And so you got a solid man with unbelievable fight background fighting in his backyard, and this guy Moicano is a warrior to show up for this. But Benoit St. Denis is going to smear Moicano all over the canvas in this fight. This will be a one-sided fight, and Benoit St. Denis is going to annihilate Mr. Moicano. I hate to say it. I like Moicano. Personality a mile long, but this is a bad spot for him.
And for you, correct me if I'm wrong, the fights initially start at 9 a.m. West Coast time. Is that correct?
Yeah, Pacific time, they start at 9 a.m. So it's going to be lattes and left hooks for me until at least lunchtime. And then, by lunchtimes, I'll have a sub sandwich with my submission. But it's going to be, I love it when the fights are early like this. because they'll be in prime time France. So all those Frenchmen will be full of red wine watching the fights. But more importantly, by the time the fights get over here by the time the fights get over here in the States, the Bama and Georgia game will be starting shortly thereafter. So those that want to watch college football can segue from one sport to the other.
I was just going to lead right into that. You couldn't ask for a better setting. Breakfasts of champions here at the UFC. Then you get yourself a little lunch for the main card, and then the fights, the co-main event, the main event, and then you go find a little dinner, and you get set up for Georgia at Tuscaloosa. How's that sound?
Yeah, and that's just one day, and then starting next week, we're October. Now I know there's people that love March. God bless them. I'm not a basketball guy, but there is no month in sport like October. Playoff baseball, NFL, college football, UFC, hockey, and NBA starting. It's October here, and then everybody competes for number 2, and March can have number 2 far as I'm concerned.
Lou, the scroll has been going the whole time. Everyone knows to find you, obviously, on Twitter at GamLou. Sneak Teep podcast on Mondays, and then, of course, Bout Business podcast on Friday after the weigh-ins. But as we always end our segment with you here, tell everyone, A, where to find you, and B, talk about your website and where they can sign up.
I do NFL, UFC, hockey playoffs, and College World Series, and those are the only sports I work. Narrow focus, increase expertise. One-stop shop, GamBlue.com. You can find everything about me there. Testimonials on me, our mission statement. You can find everything we do, the sports we work, and the descriptions of how we work those sports. Most importantly, there's a Mission San Xavier Del Bach button on the top of my webpage. Proceeds from the GamBlue webpage are directed directly down to the San Xavier mission south of Tucson. It's the oldest mission in the country. They are doing great work there, and I'm happy to contribute a portion of the GamBlue proceeds regularly to the San Xavier mission. I appreciate you letting me say that, Jeff.
Oh, no problem there, of course. And lastly, I don't know if we have the answer to this. This week, Paris. Do you know next week where the UFC will be?
No.
I don't either. I should have known
No,
that. I should have.
I mean, I'll prep up for that, but I mean, I don't know where. I mean, they were in Noche 2 weeks ago. This one I'm calling Noir. And I can't tell you where they are next week, but what I can tell you is by Sunday I'll let you know, because I'll have had all my study and my template database and model all set up. But you can count on one thing, 3 p.m. Eastern next week, you and me, Jeff, will be right here talking about that fight card.
And I will have to thank Mr. Elijah Cox, as he says, we will be in Salt Lake City. How's that sound?
Yeah, I think it's 307 Salt Lake City, Pereira against Roundtree. That'll be a great fight.
As always, set your dial 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock in the West Coast time. Every Thursday, myself and Lou and Elijah Cox will meet you guys here to break down, or Lou will be breaking down the fights. Enjoy Paris. Bright and early, 9 a.m. West Coast, 12 o'clock Eastern. Plenty of time in between once the fights end up to go on over to watch a little Alabama and Georgia. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one, the only Mr. Lou Finocchiaro at GamLou. Shout out to Elijah Cox. 5 p.m. Ron Marmolevsky will be back here talking college football and NFL. Till then, everyone behave, be safe, and enjoy the fights.